Welcome to the Rise Up For You podcast, where thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and executives from around the world share their practical tips, strategies, and stories to help you unleash your potential and achieve your goals. Your journey of growth to become your best starts now.
Hey, welcome back to the Rise Up For You podcast. Before we jump in, if you haven't already, wherever you're listening to this podcast or watching it, if you're watching it on YouTube, give us a subscribe, give us a like. We have no advertisement or sponsorship on this show. All we ask is that you subscribe to our content, you like it, and you share it with your friends and your family. We're all about building community and sharing our content here at Rise Up For You. All right, are you ready? Let's jump into today's episode with yet again another amazing guest. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Rise Up For You podcast. This is your host, Nedalina Nasruddin. And today I am super excited, actually more than thrilled about our guest, Gino Wickman. So if any of you are entrepreneurs or you're a small business owner, hopefully you have heard of Gino. He's the founder of the EOS Entrepreneurial Operating System, which has been seen in thousands of companies around the world. He has trained thousands of organizations. And today he's here on our podcast. Rise Up For You, I have to tell you, uses the EOS system. Many of our clients use the system. I've read almost every book by Gino, and Gino, so honored to have you here. Thank you.
Well, it is a pleasure to be here with you, Netta. Looking forward to this conversation and hopefully helping a few people out today.
Oh, I know you will for sure. So Gino, I always love to start the podcast by letting the audience get to know our guest in your own words. So brag a little bit, take us through a journey, how you got to today and where EOS came from.
Sure. Well, starting with who I am a guy who is absolutely passionate about helping entrepreneurs and business owners get everything they want out of their business and life. And so that's my working life and my working passion. And in the last 3 decades, I've created 5 pieces of content that help them succeed. And very quickly, they are number 1, Entrepreneurial Leap, which helps anyone who thinks they want to start a business determine if they're cut out for it and how to do it. From there, I then created Rocket Fuel to help that entrepreneur, when they're ready to grow to the next level, find their integrator counterpart to the visionary entrepreneur that they are. The 3rd piece of content is EOS. That's a book, Traction, that I wrote that helps that entrepreneur then run their business like a Swiss watch, as you alluded to already. There's then EOS Life, the 4th piece of content that helps that entrepreneur live their ideal life. And then there's the 5th piece of content, which is what we're going to talk about today, that I call 10 disciplines. And where the first 4 pieces of content, if you can see that as kind of the life of the entrepreneur as they climb the mountain, it's all designed to help them succeed in their outer world, where 10 disciplines goes into that scary place, their inner world. And so what I've seen now too many times that I can count is the entrepreneur climbs to the top of the mountain thinking there's a mountain. They ring the bell, and unfortunately, they're feeling unfulfilled. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the saying, "Is this all there is?" And then it just kind of forces them to look inside to really find that fulfillment. And so those are the 5 pieces of content I put out in the world, and welcome to go anywhere and everywhere you want to go with all that.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm very excited to tap into the 10 disciplines as well. I want to backtrack just a little bit and kind of get a little bit more of your journey, especially for our audience. How did you get into really supporting entrepreneurs? I know, of course, you're an entrepreneur yourself. You've gone through some different challenges. You've created this amazing system. But I think it's also important to understand the mindset of you creating the system and how it came about.
Sure. Well, it's a very uncommon path. So I grew up a wild and crazy entrepreneur in the making, barely graduated high school, graduated with a solid 2.3 GPA, did not go to college. As my friends all went off to college, there was no way I was going to spend another minute in academia. I just wanted to go to work. And I learned that I just learn a very different way than most people learn. And so I just set out to then seek my fortune and tried a whole bunch of different stuff, bumping along successes and failures to where I found myself in the real estate industry when I got into real estate investing. Well, shoot forward, my dad is kind of a guru in the real estate industry and created a sales training program in that industry. And so as I found myself in the real estate industry because I decided I wanted to put that commission in my pocket with these deals that I was doing. I then fell in love with my dad's company and set out, was very successful in the real estate industry. And as I fell in love with my dad's company and learned what it did, I really wanted to be a part of that company. I kind of fought my way into the organization. He didn't want his kids in the business, started at the bottom, worked my way up. Well, at 25 years old, I took over that business and I took on a big turnaround project. It took me 3 years to completely turn the business around. I was armed with two amazing mentors in my dad and a gentleman by the name of Sam Cup. Ran that business for 7 years. We then successfully sold that business. And that's when I discovered my knack for helping visionary entrepreneurs, because I was helping my visionary father. I then stayed on to transition in the new leadership team out of Virginia, and then retired from the company and set out to pursue what I realized was my calling and passion, and that's helping entrepreneurs. And so for the last 22 years, that's what I've been doing. And I found one that would let me help him, another and another. And over a 5-year period, I put the finishing touches on what is now EOS. I wrote the book Traction, and then joined forces with my wonderful partner, Don Tinney. And he and I then built EOS Worldwide and brought that to the world. Along the way, I've written 7 more books. We now have 225,000 companies running on EOS. Sold about 2.5 million books. Well, we sold that business now almost 6 years ago, and successfully sold that. It has now continued to grow massively. There's now 750 EOS implementers all over the world. I still own 12.5% of that company. I still own all the books. I'm still the EOS guy. Half my working life is still EOS stuff. I still speak and I teach. And in addition to that, I'm also involved in this other content that I talked about. And my latest project is 10 Disciplines, one of the things we're going to talk about today.
Thank you for sharing all that. So we can take a good guess that you're great at entrepreneurship.
I guess I'll never take anything for granted. It's been a wild ride, and there wasn't one thing that was easy. So I very scrappily, if that's a word, just kind of worked my way into pursuing a passion, because it's all at the core of all of it is just a passion for helping entrepreneurs. And I just kind of figured it out along the way and helped a whole bunch of other entrepreneurs figure it out as well.
Yeah, one thing that I really love about what you've created, Gino, is the simplicity behind the structure. So the EOS system, and I know we're going to talk about the 10 disciplines, I find it to be so digestible. Like really any organization can take it and implement it. And it's a game changer within I mean, we're working with companies that are, you know, in oil and solar and all kinds of stuff, and they are using this system, and it's really helping even for our business as well here at Rise Up For You. So I appreciate, again, the simplicity, because some stuff out there can be very complicated and overwhelming, and then there's no execution behind it. There's too much clutter. But really the way that you have created it is, again, very digestible. So I just want to say that. And again, anyone that's listening that's not familiar, get familiar with it, because I even use it in my personal life. So we'll talk about that in a second. Yeah. So I want to talk about the 10 disciplines, which is, you know, the book number 5 that you discussed earlier. Because one thing that we see sometimes, which I think is really important that you're doing the 10 disciplines, is we have this system, but it's really the people behind the system that drive it forward. Mm-hmm. And if people are unfulfilled, if people lack motivation and discipline, then you can have the most amazing system, but sometimes it won't go anywhere because, again, the people behind it aren't their best. Mm. And so you wrap it up nicely with the 10 disciplines, because I think it's that piece of you got everything you need, but you as the individual now need to, you know, move forward and execute. So let's jump into the 10 disciplines. What spark, did you already know you were going to do that at the end of the content, or along the process did you say, hey, we need this for people?
Yeah, I wish I were that smart, you know. And so just backing up on a couple of things that you said and then answering your question, you know, you mentioned the content being simple. You know, that's really my secret recipe, is everything I create is simple and practical. So I'm a fanatic about just keeping it really practical. And then you use the word execution. I'm also very accountability based. It's like, we gotta implement this stuff and make it happen. So with all 5 pieces of content that I mentioned, what you'll find is it's all very simple, practical stuff. And so with that, with the 10 disciplines, I wish I could say that I was smart enough to create these 5 pieces of content in this linear fashion that I just shared it with you, but just the opposite. There's an old saying that we teach what we needed the most. And so I was just kind of called to create each piece of content. So ironically, EOS was first, then Rocket Fuel, then Entrepreneurial Leap, then EOS. So unfortunately, it wasn't in this perfect linear fashion. Nonetheless, now that they're all created, it very much is in that linear fashion because it's so important to understand the entrepreneurial climb. And then, like you're saying, they get to that point where it's time to go inside. So the history of the 10 disciplines is very interesting in that I created them about 4 or 5 years ago, and they were all outer world focused. So it was this next kind of level of helping the entrepreneur succeed in their outer world beyond EOS life and their ideal life. So it's kind of the icing on the cake. Well, what's happened now in the last 4 or 5 years is they've evolved into this incredible foundation and platform that helps create space and time in an entrepreneur's life to not only maximize and really master their outer world, but also master their inner world. And so, like I said, it's going into that very scary place where, the reality of an entrepreneur is we tend to be very driven. And so we have this driven DNA, and it's a blessing and a curse. So the blessing is that we're the creators of most things on the planet. The curse is we do a lot of damage to ourselves and the people in our lives along the way because we just tend to leave this black trail. And what's important to understand is that it is who you are. It's DNA, it's genetic, and it's not changing. But the beauty is you can temper it. And so with this 10 disciplines content, it's really helping you go to that, I jokingly, but also realistically say that scary place, because it's now time to go in and just kind of go to the root of some of the pain and trauma that we tend to live with that tends to drive us, and really confront that reality. And I'm speaking from experience. And so what's ironic is, all this content I've talked about, all 5 pieces, I'm teaching what I needed the most. I wrote Entrepreneurial Leap to teach my 18-year-old mislabeled derelict entrepreneur in the making self. That's what I needed at 18 that I didn't have. Well, the reality for me, when I sold EOS Worldwide almost 6 years ago, 2 years after that sale, 4 years ago, roughly, I just kind of had an awakening. And I was sitting in my living room, looking back at all of my success. Embarrassingly, I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I was thinking, my life's pretty good. And then the second I said that, the universe hit me upside the head with a 2x4 and just kind of woke me up. And all of my pain and trauma from my childhood came up in a really big way. And so it's been a very profound last 4 years in terms of really going inside. And the only way we can go inside as driven entrepreneurs is to create the space and the platform and the time to do that. And the 10 disciplines will help do that. And so there's kind of the contextual setting of the stage.
No, I love it. And it's interesting because while you were talking, I was thinking about how sometimes it can be a double-edged sword. We can use our pain as fuel for growth and really drive and build success. But at some point, if we don't address it, it can almost come back and sabotage the same success that it created, right?
Yes.
So I know you have the 10 disciplines. I'm excited to jump in. If you were to pick, 3 out of the 10 that you would say, all right, everybody, you got to start with these 3 right now, what would they be? And then we can digest them a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And let me start by just quickly giving all 10, because I always like to have context out there for the listener, and then let's go deep into 3. So discipline number 1, 10-year thinking. Discipline number 2, take time off. Number 3, know thyself. Number 4, be still. Number 5, know your 100%. Number 6, say no often. Number 7, don't do $25 an hour work. Number 8, prepare every night. Number 9, put everything in one place. And number 10, be humble. So I can certainly pick 3, but do 1, 2, or 3 stand out for you? You know your audience better than I do.
For sure. Well, all of them do, but the first one I really want to tap into is know thyself, Gino, because especially right now in today's world, there's a lot of stuff out there. There's tons of narratives that are coming our way. People are lost. I mean, we're very familiar with the Gallup survey that every year it's the same. 77% of individuals feel disengaged, miserable, not fulfilled. And I think people are really struggling with clarity. And I'll tell you honestly, when our team does any kind of masterclass on clarity, we get the most attendance, everything from executives down to entry level, because people are struggling to really find out who they are, what their values are. So let's start with know thyself.
Yeah, fantastic. And you picked the perfect one to start with, because this contextual point we started with, you know, we're talking about that driven entrepreneur and really knowing themselves, and really what we like to describe as freeing their true self, really understanding their genetic encoding, their wiring, and who they are as their true self at their core. Everything we're talking about is in this new book called Shine that I wrote with my co-author, Rob Dubay. Comes out on March 26th.
Right.
And where this starts, because I talked about how these disciplines both help in the outer world and the inner world. I want you to kind of watch this shift from outer to inner, because on the surface, from an outer world standpoint, knowing thyself starts with really understanding your strengths and your weaknesses, and then your personality traits, and then knowing all about yourself. As we start to go deeper and deeper beyond skills and abilities and traits and talents, which are all wonderful, wonderful things that help you do your work better, find your sweet spot in life, keep you in your sweet spot. We now go deeper into what's really going on again on the inside, and helping you shed anything preventing you from fully being your true self. And that's, I realized that I spent 35 years when I created a persona for myself at age 15 after my childhood traumas to protect myself from the world. Well, again, at 52, when I really started to shed all of that and really see who I was at my core, once I shed it, I actually became more driven. I actually became more of myself. I shine brighter than ever, hence the title of the book, Shine. And so it's really about understanding who you are on the inside, knowing your true self, knowing your soul, to use another word, and letting that fully shine in the world and be yourself.
Yeah, I love that. Is there anything that you know, some kind of strategy or anything that you start with? You know, for example, for yourself, did you sit down and ask yourself what your values were, or what was important to you? You know, what was the first thing that got you to sit down and say, all right, how do I figure out who I am?
Yeah, that's great. So again, it depends on how deep we're going, because obviously when you go to that deepest level, you start to go to that scary place, and sometimes you need professional help. But let's start with the surface, because I would say, yes, absolutely, discovering your core values is a great place to start. I teach how to do that in Traction, but if somebody wants a really easy resource, there are these incredible core value cards by Think to Perform, where you go through this wonderful little 15-minute exercise and out pop your 3 to 7 core values. So certainly start there. I also recommend profiling tools. There are such amazing profiling tools out there. You already talked about StrengthsFinder, Colby, Myers, DISC. I mean, there's just so many different types of profiling tools to really start to know yourself. We also prescribe an exercise to all of our clients. It's a strengths and weakness exercise where you reach out to the closest people in your life and ask them what they believe are your strengths and your weaknesses. This is where we start to go deeper into this stuff. And then when all of the disciplines are in place in your life, like I keep saying, it creates space and time in your life. And one of the disciplines is be still. And so if you take time to be still, whether that's meditation, contemplation, journaling, prayer, the silence will help stuff come up that helps you really understand what's going on inside and who you really are. And so some of the blocks come up and they release and you're more of yourself, and some incredible insights about you come up. And so you could do the home study course just by going inside. Wow. So there are some ways to know thyself.
I love it. You're speaking my language with self-awareness and emotional intelligence and understanding what's going on in here.
Here.
Okay, the next one that kind of stuck out to me, I want to say it's maybe number 8, is the $25, not doing $25 work.
Yeah. So on that one, I'm not knocking $25 an hour work. So we need lots of people earning $25 an hour. So what I always say is the discipline is don't do $25 an hour work, ... if you want to make 6 figures. Okay. And so if you out there want to make 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures, you're not going to do it doing $25 an hour work. So what you have to do is delegate and elevate. You can't be doing $25 an hour work. And $25 an hour work, as you delegate that, you hire someone to do those administrative tasks. do those tasks that you should not be doing. It elevates you to do $100 an hour work, $200 an hour work, $500 an hour work. And so the idea is to just be aware. And we're talking about energy management here. We're talking about impact here. We're talking about you really and truly finding inner peace. Well, to the degree you can stop doing $25 an hour work and elevate yourself. Once you elevate yourself, all of a sudden you can stop doing $50 an hour work. Then you can stop doing $100, and you just keep moving up to the place that you want to be. And so if that's 75 grand a year, 750,000 a year, in other words, you can keep moving up to the level that you want to move up to in terms of the income you want to make. But the point is, don't do low energy work. It's draining you, and you're making less of an impact, and you're creating less value in the world.
Yeah. And what you're saying correlates to both the corporate professional and also the entrepreneur. I know for me, that was a huge shift last year coming into 2024, is as we're scaling the business as an organization. And I'm driving sales as well, and asking myself, what am I doing as an owner that I really don't need to be doing? And I mean, I was shocked, Gino, to see how much less than $25 an hour worth I was doing. Yes. And then I was like, I can't be doing that anymore. And so, stepping into 2024, I had the do it, the delegate it. And we've only been 3 weeks into 2024, and there's been a significant shift in just energy scaling, my time, where it's going. So I think both corporate and entrepreneurs can really take that and run with it.
Yeah. Okay. And there's an EOS tool we taught you called Delegate and Elevate. It's a very powerful tool. You can find it in a couple of the books. It's in EOS Life, but that tool is so powerful because it just helps you keep seeing what to delegate and what to elevate to, what to delegate, what to elevate to. And it's just a beautiful journey. And I just urge everybody out there, delegate one thing per quarter. And 10 years from now, you'll look up making a hell of a lot more money and being a lot more happy and making a bigger impact.
100%. I love that. Okay, Gino, I'm going to give you the pleasure and the honor of picking number 3.
Number 3. Okay. So, oh boy, it's always so hard to do that because they're of equal importance to me. So what I'll do is I'm going to grab Be Still, since we touched on it, and it's so profound and powerful, and most people are so afraid of it. Okay. So let's pick the scary one. And so our recommendation on Be Still is that you sit in silence for 30 minutes every day. And again, that's meditation, that's prayer, that's contemplation, that's journaling. So it's not just meditation, but there's that funny saying that says, my mind is like a bad neighborhood. I try not to go there alone. And so it's very scary for people to look inside. And there was a study done, I'll say it fast and give you the high level, but it's a very powerful study where they had them sit in a room in silence by themselves for 15 minutes. And in the room is this button that if they push it, they get an electrical shock. Now, before going in the room, they already received the shock, and it was so painful, they said they'd pay money to never receive the shock again. These people all went in one at a time, did the study. Almost 50% of the people hit the button, and one gentleman hit it 120 times. And so the point is, we human beings, most of us are just so afraid to sit in silence because that's when the stuff comes up. And that's when whatever's in there, whatever you're storing in there, the blocks that you've been holding. Again, in my case, at age 15, when I created my persona, I pushed all the pain and trauma down for it to only come up at 52 years old. So sitting in silence has those things come up, and it scares us, but it's so powerful. So we urge 30 minutes, like I said, every morning, that you sit in silence and just let it all come up. And not only do the blocks come up, we lovingly call it shedding your shit, but also incredible intuition and creativity and clarity and better health, energy increase. There's so many amazing benefits in addition to the removing blocks and letting things come up. And as you notice these blocks come up, sometimes you do need help, and it's important to go seek help to help you understand it when you can't do it. But you can do the home study course with this stuff. You just got to commit for the long haul to this very powerful discipline, 30 minutes every morning of just being still.
I love that. Yeah. And I like how it's be still versus meditate, because, sometimes people they don't resonate with meditation. And so they stay away from it because they think, okay, I can't do it with my mind. But you're simply saying it can be anything as long as you're just still.
Yeah. And there's a great analogy that helps make the point, and that's why I purposely call it Be Still, is if you picture a glass jar, and in the glass jar, there's sand in half the jar and then water. And then picture the lid is on tight, and you shake that jar. all of a sudden you look at it after shaking it, it's all cloudy and murky and you can't see through it, but you set it on a table for 15 minutes, all of a sudden all that sand settles and you can see right through the jar, you can see right through the water. Well, that's the point about be still. If you will be still, then your central nervous system will settle like that. Everything will be much clearer because we driven entrepreneurs, we're going so hard. Our central nervous system is always so amped up. We've got to get it to stop and take a break to find that inner peace.
Yeah, I love that. Gino, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast. I'd love to jump into the rapid fire section of the interview. Just going to ask you a few questions.
Sure.
So we always like to ask, if you were to leave the world with one final message, we call it our golden nugget. What would your golden nugget be?
That's very simple. It's you deserve it. I want everyone walking this earth to know they deserve it. It's amazing how many people feel unworthy. And so this conversation that we just had, if everybody out there deserves this, they deserve it. There is not one good reason they can give why they don't. It's just simply that you deserve it. I wish we could give everybody a pill or snap our fingers or wave a magic wand, because it'd be a whole different world if everybody realized they deserved it, whatever the it is.
Yeah, 100%. Completely agree. As you know, Gino, values are very important to us here at Rise Up For You. We've talked about them already. What's one value that's an absolute non-negotiable for you?
Oh, man. So I'm going to pick probably, it's a 5-way tie, but I'm going to go with be humbly confident. And I'm telling you, it's a 5-way tie. And so it's one of the core values that I've built all of my organizations on. And it's a combination of being humble while knowing your stuff. And so it's being humble enough to never take it for granted, to never be cocky, to never be arrogant. I abhor arrogance. And so it's this wonderful combination of bringing your greatness to the world while staying humble.
I love that. And final question for you before I jump into that. Tell us where we can find you, Gino. I know you have Shine coming out in March. Anything that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, so I would direct everyone to the10disciplines.com. And what you'll find there is certainly the release of the book, but you'll find the book at all major retailers. But there's a very powerful tool there that you can take called the True Self-Assessment. It's free. You answer 20 questions about yourself, and you are going to find out how free your true self really is, how free your soul, your essence, your heart, whatever you want to call that inner power source, you're going to find out how free it really is. And then we offer self-study, we offer group coaching, and a mastermind around the 10 disciplines to really embed these in your lives. And you'll find all of that at the10disciplines.com.
Fantastic. And we'll make sure we put it in the show notes as well.
Appreciate
Gino,
that.
Thank you so much for joining us. Final question for you. As you know, we are Rise Up For You. What comes to mind for you when you hear that phrase?
So rise up for you. I mean, I don't know how it's not like the most perfect phrase for what we've been talking about. I mean, it's everything we talked about. So I call it freeing your true self. That is rising up for you. I mean, it is time for you to be fully you in the world. I consider it, and I look at it as shining bright, vibrating at a very high level. Well, that's the exact same thing as rise up for you. Rise up, be you. Don't apologize for it. Let your true self shine.
I love that. Gino, thank you so much for joining us. This was a fantastic conversation. I'm very, very happy to have you here. Of course, we'll be getting the book. We'll put everything in the show notes. So thank you, everyone, for joining us here on the Rise For You podcast. Yet again, a fantastic episode. Just as a reminder, we are here every single week bringing you amazing executives, entrepreneurs, thought leaders from around the world that are here with one mission, and that is to serve you and help you be your best. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Gino.
What a pleasure.